Our next speaker is Dr. Stephen Hurder. He's the founding economist of Prysm Group. Dr. Stephen Hurder is a Harvard-educated economist specializing in human capital, market design, and the future of the work. He's the founding economist at the Prysm Group, a firm that specializes in economic and government design for blockchain company, institution, and government. Prior to found Prysm Group, Dr. Hurder was at the Boston Consulting Group. He has held research positions at MIT, Microsoft Research, and Merrill Lynch, and has led seminars to faculties at half-dozen top research universities across the United States. He holds PhD in business economics, an AM in economics, and an AB in mathematics from Harvard University. Let's welcome Stephen. Do you have your microphone? Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. That's me. All right. Is this how this works? All right. Good afternoon, everyone. That was a really interesting talk on how biology and blockchain may have some similarities in terms of their evolution, so glad I got to see that. So today I just want to spend a few minutes talking about why economics is essential for blockchain. And I think for a lot of you, this basic statement isn't very much of a surprise. You know, we're familiar with token economics, we're familiar, some of you have heard of crypto economics. But I'm going to try to start to convince you at least that economics is going to be one of the fundamental pillars of successful blockchain projects. So along with the technology, the business strategy, the legal aspect, successful platforms are going to need to embrace economic design. So I'm going to start to tell you a little bit about why I think that's the case. So this is me, as the introduction nicely mentioned. I have a PhD in economics from Harvard, and I'm the co-founder of Prysm Group. We're PhD economists who help blockchain projects with their economic design. And just before I begin, a disclaimer, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a broker-dealer, none of this is investment advice. If you're looking to issue or buy any kind of investment, please seek those people instead. All right, so why does blockchain need economics? I'm going to start with a basic definition of what is economics. It's the study of individual optimization and strategic interaction. So economists study how do we make decisions based on the constraints that we face and the environment that we live in. And from this, we can generate lots of different interesting projects. Early economists were more focused on how do people make decisions, and as they got better at understanding this, they got called in to design systems. So economists now, not only did they design taxation systems, they design labor markets, they do spectrum auctions for governments. Any place where we're trying to design a system where individuals will come and make choices, economists play a useful role. So why is economics essential for blockchain? Blockchain founders are building decentralized economic systems in code. In order for blockchain platforms to work, users are going to need to come to the platforms and individually make decisions that are in line with what's best for the platform. If users do not behave in the way that the platform needs, the platform won't be successful. The more decentralized your project is, the more important this is. In many of the institutions that we're used to dealing with on a regular basis, there's somebody in charge. So if there's not a pre-existing rule for what should be done, there is someone, residual to decide what to do at the last minute. A decentralized project doesn't have that luxury, so the design needs to be thought through beforehand. As I mentioned before, many of you are familiar with tokenomics. Some of you are familiar maybe with mechanism design and incentives. But there are actually a huge number of fields of economics that are important for blockchain. One of the lesser known ones that I like to talk about is called social choice theory. Social choice theory studies how to design the best system for a group of individuals to collectively make a decision. That sounds an awful lot like blockchain governance, doesn't it? Right, so if we put together social choice, game theory, the design of markets, these are all pieces that are needed in the blockchain setting as well. And economic design also applies to all three levels of the blockchain system. You know, as we all know, incentives are fundamental to a well-functioning blockchain protocol. You know, and then on top of that, you have a DApp that's maybe building a marketplace or is looking to replace standard labor market contracts with smart contracts. And then finally, there are ecosystem issues. You know, anyone starting a blockchain platform knows that you need well-trained talent. How do we get that? How do we set up a funding environment that people can understand? Economics comes into all of these sections. So I want to go through a couple of examples of where economic design comes into play in blockchain. I'm going to start with the simplest, everyone's favorite, the Bitcoin protocol. You know, so there are fundamental economic goals that the creator of Bitcoin set out. They wanted users to want to use the platform. They want it to be attractive and deliver value. They wanted control to be distributed. They wanted it to be secure. And they made a number of design decisions. You know, most notably, they implemented proof of work as the consensus algorithm and made a number of other choices. And what you can see, if you compare what's actually happened to what was intended, you know, Bitcoin is pretty widely adopted. It's pretty secure, but it's been less successful as they had hoped in maintaining distributed control. It also turns out to be really expensive. Another example, how many people in here are familiar with token-curated registries? All right, one here. So a token-curated registry is a decentralized method of making a list. So for example, suppose that I want to make a list of the best restaurants in New York City, but I don't want to leave the power for making that list with a specific individual. I can try to create a token-curated registry where token holders vote on what should be included in the list. And the goals of a token-curated registry, you see them in all kinds of different places, are two. So first, we want to take control from a small group and give it to a larger group. And second, we want to produce a list that people actually want to use and read. It turns out that token-curated registries are a strategic game, as in game theory. And they can have what's called multiple equilibria. So many times when you're reading a white paper that involves a token-curated registry, the paper will say, we're going to have a list that will contain the following things, and we assert that all the users will do what's necessary in order for this list to happen. However, that doesn't need to be the case. You can actually get token-curated registries that go completely off the rails because the game theory points them in the wrong direction. This is actually something that my business partners and I had noticed in theory. We wrote an article about it, and then I went to a conference and met a founder of a token-curated registry, and he was just despondent because he had launched his TCR, and it went completely nuts. So the users of the TCR had kicked off the list, all of the individuals and organizations that they actually wanted to be on there, and had filled it up with cat pictures or something like that. So this actually happens. Now, these are just a couple of examples. One of the key pieces we try to point out is that economic design has a huge number of facets, and they all need to work together for your platform to work. And not all of these are going to apply to every single platform, but they're all different pieces, right? And so you need to think about how are contracts designed. If you have people buying and selling, how is the marketplace functioning? What information do people need for the system to work? And then on top of that, what is it that's going to be tokenized? How do the tokens function? And then how is the governance designed so that the platform can make changes and decisions as needed over time? Now what does this imply for investors? I know many of you are seasoned investors, and so some of this may not be a surprise, but we always find it's worth reiterating. These are, there are definitely more kinds, but these are 4 types of blockchain investments. We have the 3 different kinds of tokens, and then we also have, I've listed it as equity shares, but just more standard, equity ownership and related ownership in companies. One of the very interesting things about blockchain investment is that you have investments driven by different types of factors. So for example, utility tokens derive their value from giving you access to products or services, which is different from a more standard dividend-based investment payoff. But one thing we emphasize to our clients and to anyone we talk to is that all of these tokens, all of these investments, in order to have fundamental value, need to be connected to blockchain platforms that actually function. Right? If you think about what are the different types of investments that can be made, you're either buying something that can be exchanged for goods and services on the platform, or rely on having users show up and pay to use the platform. Right? And so if the platform doesn't function as it's supposed to, if it's not secure, if it doesn't deliver sufficient value, these investments are not going to have the fundamental value that they could if the platform were well designed. Right? So beyond, going back to what I said at the beginning, a lot of platform creators are very interested in the token economics. What's my hard cap? What's the initial allocation going to be? That's one piece of it, but also thinking through what's the economic design of the platform you're launching, and is it guaranteeing your platform is going to work, is equally, if not more, important. Yep, so just to reiterate, blockchain platforms are complex economic systems enshrined in code. And similarly, what I hope you'll take away from here is that just as you need a good lawyer, just as you need a great tech team, you also need economists to think through the functioning and the incentives of your decentralized platform and make sure that it's going to work in the way that will deliver the most value to your users. As I mentioned, my name is Stephanie Hurder. At Prysm Group, we do a lot of writing on how economics is important for different players in the blockchain ecosystem. I've got my contact information here. We're always happy to talk. For those of you who might be on the technical side of things, we'll actually be giving a class at the University of Southern California intended for computer scientists and engineers on economics for blockchain developers. So I hope you'll look into that. Anyway, thank you very much.